Building a culture of innovation in healthcare.
Hello everyone, we're just going to get cracking because I think we want to try and stay to time. I'm really pleased to be leading off this panel. My name is Keith and I'm going to be leading a panel on building a culture of innovation in healthcare. And I am delighted to be here in this beautiful country as well as this beautiful setting as well and see you all here. My background is as a UK-based general practitioner who's crossed the street and now works in digital health. So I'm a digital health and innovation consultant with my own consultancy. And I'm really pleased to be talking about this because throughout my entire career I've been very, very interested in the subject of innovation. I've worked in innovation within the NHS, being an innovation lead for a number of CCGs back in the day, and saw how slowly everything moved and worked very, very hard to try and build a culture of innovation there. And then I moved on, I worked at Babylon for 4.5 years. People seem very interested in that fact sometimes, and I was the director of digital health and innovation there as well. So again, we worked on building a culture of innovation. So I have my own thoughts on this, but you're not here to hear about my thoughts in particular. You're here to hear from some of these great panelists. So I'm going to very quickly move on to speak about them just now. So today we have 4 panelists, and we're going to start on the far end. We're going to start with Wiktoria MILCZYNSKA. Wiktoria is a medical doctor and one of the co-founders of Medtechly, which is a platform for helping doctors get involved in MedTech, which I wholly support. She's passionate about empowering technology-enabled transformation of healthcare. Then next, going from the far side across here, we've got Aahuti Ray, and Ahuti's advisor to early-stage startups focusing on market access and clinical adoption. She's also a venture partner with Conduit Connect, a VC impact fund, and her background's grounded in innovation and tech, working across 13 different industries, including healthcare, happily. Next up, we've got Harry LYKOSTRATIS, and Harry is a practicing orthopedic surgeon, which is grand, and founder, CEO, and lead engineer of Open Medical, which is a digital health company providing digital transformation and clinical workflows across more than 150 healthcare organizations in the UK and across Europe. And then finally, we've got Matthew Brown. Matthew's Group Medical Director at BUPA and supports with the implementation of innovative solutions across BUPA's global insurance and provision business, which includes digital health solutions, pathway redesign, and supporting novel approaches in payer and provider contracting. So, can you? There you go. Hopefully you can still hear me. So we're going to get cracking. I'm going to start. First of all, I'm going to come to you, Matthew, if that's all right. As a leader, what does it take to build a culture of innovation?
So the part of the business that I sit in within BUPA is the central function. So we've got businesses all over the world serving customers, South America, Europe, Australia. And when I go and visit people who are working in those different businesses, actually I think people who work in healthcare are very, very engaged and want to innovate. But the challenge they face is that healthcare is so complex. And I think even reflecting on who's here today, the number of companies here today, and I think it's been mentioned earlier, actually, the number of conditions, the number of different environments that you can provide healthcare in, the complexity of the number of different stakeholders, actually that's very overwhelming for individuals who are looking to innovate within a company. So the role that I play, and I think my team plays as a central clinical function in that, is actually providing individuals with kind of tools and direction to navigate that complexity. And those can be internally driven tools, or those can be externally driven tools. So internally, I think the number one place where we help is through a clear strategy. And at BUPA, we've been very clear that our strategy or our ambition is to be the world's most customer-centric healthcare company, and then we back that up with metrics. So having a very clear ambition for a customer experience score of a net promoter score of 80, and every single one of our businesses, no matter where they are in the world, should be aiming to achieve that. The second aspect is actually giving our businesses some breathing space to actually think about the future of healthcare. So everyone's very, very busy with kind of business as usual, in-year targets. But we've actually got a dedicated clinical horizon scanning function, which actually gives our businesses insights into what the future of healthcare looks 3, 5+ years down the line. And then finally, I'd say there's external drivers. I think the main one there is probably regulation. So there's no point in engaging with an innovative new product that's kind of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years away from actually getting medical regulation approval. And I've been there myself, where you work for 6 months on something you think is really exciting, and then actually, there's nothing that crushes innovation or innovative spirit more than actually you realize you can't even implement it with customers. So I think the role of a kind of central function in a kind of multinational company can actually be to help direct that enthusiasm and that ambition that a lot of individuals within healthcare companies have, but kind of helping them to navigate that complexity so they can actually achieve their ambitions.
Great, thanks. So you're really clearly illustrating the importance of leadership there in sort of acting as a beacon and also providing the tools and the setting, critical for culture, to allow internal stakeholders do this as well. But it's also, I want to pick up, you also mentioned about how signaling your direction of travel helps external companies build innovation. So maybe Aahuti, I'll come to you at this point, if that's okay, because you've worked with early stage startups. So hearing that, how helpful is that approach to startups trying to come in? What is it about culture of innovation that's helpful for startups wanting to make their way into providing?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So I think one of the positives about the innovation that we've seen, we've got to acknowledge that a lot of innovation existed pre-COVID, but the benefit of the pandemic that it brought to us in this sector is it really kind of created this huge spark of interest, and suddenly there was a need, and the first kind of, if you go to Change Management 101, you have to create a need, and then you have to shape a vision, and that's when change starts to happen. So I think when it comes to startups, the need has definitely been created. The problem, however, is a lot of that need is anchored in problems. And so what that creates is like a sense of desperation to rescue the healthcare system, and that actually stifles innovation. So what Matthew described there in terms of, a kind of a hub where innovation is nurtured and fostered and encouraged is really where the true innovation happens. Because I guess in all of the industries I've worked across, and we've worked with like eBay, Bolt, Amazon, Trainline, all in their early days when they were innovating, it was really about having a sense of freedom and allowing for trial and error. And I think if environments like BUPA have created allow that to happen, that's really important, clearly in a safe way. We're talking about healthcare. I'm not encouraging us to be irresponsible, but we need to create an environment of freedom. We take away some aspect of this desperation and about having to rescue things. We unanchor from the problems, that we're trying to solve, and really kind of look for that white space so that we can imagine new stuff. Now, I know I'm probably describing a utopia here, but if in the title of this talk is innovation, then that really is, what we're talking about.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm really getting a sense here about creating space, creating freedom, allowing people to sort of express their ideas and solutions. And you can see how leadership's very important in that side of things.
And sorry, Keith, just to add to that, because I think it builds on what you just said, and it links to Conrad's talk earlier about pilotitis. Mm-hmm. Because I think the whole point around innovation is that we should be allowed to see where it works, where it doesn't work so well, and then say, well, okay, so how can this work? How might we? That's a really important question in innovation. How might we? ... And I think that's partly the issue here in healthcare and with the pilots and the way that we've set up the funding and the structures around this, that we don't figure out and acknowledge, oh, okay, it won't work. This use case is not right. This use case isn't brilliant for this patient cohort, but how might we make it work for another patient cohort? And I think environments like Matthew's described encourage that. So how do we do that in universal healthcare systems?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. It's about that sort of flexibility of thinking as well and creativity. And what I've noticed being a clinician myself in tough times is that as you're up against it in a hard workplace, your ability to think creatively kind of gets a little bit limited. So I'll maybe come to you, Harry, and then you, Victoria, as doctors as well. Harry, first of all, with you, you've sort of on both sides of this. You work, you work as a surgeon, and you also work in your practice too, or in your company too. How do you think? Well, what's your experience of the culture of innovation? In particular, how do the clinical and non-clinical stakeholders, allow themselves to be free to think this way? Because most of the time when I was working, I was just thinking about the next patient, the next patient, the next patient.
I think that innovation already exists, and the fact we're all here means that we do have a culture of innovation already. So I think the bigger problem is that we have very little implemented innovation. A lot of solutions are there, but not many actually persist or scale up. A lot of this, you need buy-in from multiple stakeholders for innovation to flourish. And that includes the health professionals on the floor, the administration staff, and the leadership. And most of the healthcare is different than the other industries. Is institutional, mostly public, taxpayer funded, nationalized, and that makes it conservative. And I think the more important question to me is, how can we create a culture of transformation? How can we enable institutions to change and get better? We do have I was looking at Conrad's numbers earlier, and we have a bottleneck, and we get into a bottleneck. I work in NHS, and we have a productivity problem. I mean, if we continue like that, I think in 10, 15 years, we will need the whole country working for the NHS to essentially look after the other half of the country. And I think this is common in a lot of national systems. We have a productivity problem, and we have a problem of health consumerism. We consume more and more health. We need to start implementing the innovation that is already out there. So I will agree with you. We need that culture of sort of inclusivity and, to some extent, experimentation, or safe and governed experimentation. Create ecosystems, technological ecosystems in our healthcare providers that they start accepting more and more innovative ideas to be implemented and bring out outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it a sort of delicate balance to try and strike? Is that you want people to feel free to have creative ideas, to be able to experiment with new ideas, but at the same time, you just don't want to have a bunch of great, new ideas. They've got to go somewhere as well. So it's a very, very tough thing to try and balance, isn't it? But yeah, we talked about the importance of leadership, creating that culture, about identifying this, about getting all the different stakeholders involved. And then you're a clinician who's worked on one side, but also the other side. And Victoria, you're a clinician near at the start of your career here as well, and you're helping clinicians, doctors, and the like come into health tech. So you're very interested in innovation. What's your perspective about the culture of innovation? What role can people near the beginning of their career do to influence that?
I think that's a really good question. As you've mentioned, I'm one of the most junior people here. So my mindset and outlook on healthcare careers is quite different due to the time point at which I entered. I think in terms of getting involved in healthcare innovations and MedTech, digital health, there's a lot to be done in terms of both entering like different projects or meeting people. From my perspective, building a culture of innovation is extremely important, and if we think about current organizations, actually there are a lot of challenges and opportunities that we can identify. Quite importantly, if we think about being in an organization, especially as clinicians, we are led by professional values. However, this does not always translate to the organizational values, and therefore can actually make us think, oh, well, are we able to foster that innovation? As clinicians, we quite often focus on patient safety, which should be the thing, but being in a position of power and actually looking after other people and conforming within the organization can make it quite challenging to make any innovations. I think an important thing to think about is also in terms of getting involved, how can we make sure that we overcome those barriers, be it networking, looking at regulatory processes or innovators at this point. I mean, these are all good ideas to enter health tech. However, I think a lot actually comes down to communication and the way we interact with other people, the way we think about problems or think about solutions rather than problems, as you've mentioned earlier, Aahuti. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's interesting to hear all these things, and what we've got on stage, and also probably in the audience, are people that are sold on the idea of innovation, or people that at least have some experience of innovation or know about this. But one thing that I do know, and it was a while back, so please correct me if I'm wrong with this, is I was taught nothing about innovation at medical school, other than a hat-tipping respect to people who had innovated in the past. And so when I came out and practiced, I had no grounding in this. I didn't understand where it would come from. I certainly had no understanding of how to assess the evidence for this. I knew an awful lot about evidence-based medicine. And as a result, I think for a long time, I would judge innovation against evidence-based practice and different types of evidence that you need. So my question to the panel, and this is more broadly, is do you think the clinical and non-clinical stakeholders know enough about innovation to allow it to succeed? How could we address that? Harry?
So I think this is a very good point. I think they know they don't. They don't know enough about innovation, but they do know outcomes. And I think we can, healthcare professionals can detect authentic innovation, because authentic innovation is outcome-based. It does need to bring an actionable output. And clinicians usually have a good feeling whether any intervention, any transformation or innovation does that. So I think they are well positioned to essentially judge innovation based on the outcome of that innovation.
So they may be closer to being able to assess it from that perspective. Matthew and then Victoria.
I thought your comparison with evidence-based medicine, normally in pharmacology or a topic like that, is actually a really helpful one, because I think when you're innovating, particularly in the commercial sector, but also the non-commercial sector, actually there's broader markers than just your classic, randomized control trial. Actually, customer experience or patient experience is absolutely essential. And actually, if you deliver a good customer experience, that in turn can deliver good access. Similar with digital healthcare, if you're increasing access for customers or patients who might not typically want to come in to a physical healthcare setting, and we don't really have metrics of that, and we're not taught as clinicians any of that kind of consideration. So I think it's more of a mindset change and a kind of broadening of the mindset beyond, okay, yeah, clinical outcomes are absolutely essential, safety is absolutely essential, but actually there's other factors as well which feed into those outcomes, which are absolutely essential to think about as well. And I think there's a gap there at the moment in the kind of medical education side regarding that.
Yeah, sure. I know any mention of customer satisfaction to my colleagues in the NHS is usually met with a stern look. Victoria?
I agree with all the previous points. I mean, from personal perspective, what I found is that clinicians quite often come up with, the most beautiful solutions and ideas as to how to tackle the digital divide, inequalities in healthcare, loads of variety of different conditions, symptoms, you name it. However, due to our training or lack thereof, especially when we are, in residency or medical school or other courses, on actually implementing and coming up with healthcare innovations, this kind of slows down the process or makes it really challenging. I'm personally at the moment advising to startups, and we've been trying to introduce those implementations and the innovations that they're working on, and it's been quite challenging. I think in terms of actually, getting people to agree to take it on because of patient safety and other priorities at the moment. I think all we can do is empower other people and introduce those conversations about bringing in that open mindset to trying out new innovations, to learning more about how if we change our current behaviors and culture, we can actually all improve patient outcomes and improve user experience.
So it's tying it all together. They may not be taught about innovation, but actually there are some intuitive things that they will get towards and also some parallels as well, so making that explicit link. Everyone warned me that this would go very fast, and it has gone very fast, so with seconds to go, I might just leave it to everyone if there's any last things. Aahuti, we just missed you there, but does anyone have any last points they'd like to make, practical points people to take away about building a culture of innovation?
I guess I'd add one, which is to not lose hope, and I know that's not tangible, but it's still practical, and I think it's because we have very much a case of Amara's law at play here for us in the health tech sector. There's been this huge spark of interest. There's now a period of disillusionment with the Babylons and the Pears and all of those kind of stories. It's all normal, natural. Capital will slow down. And we will now get to a period of enlightenment where people start seeing results from it, and then it will become the norm. So have hope.
That Gartner curve keeps popping up, doesn't it? Is there anything else that people would like to finish up with, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, just to back up what Aahuti said, people in healthcare tend to want to innovate, and I think the job, if you're in a leadership position, is to give them the guardrails so they feel like they have the freedom to be able to do that, and I think you'll get good results if you end up doing that.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll wrap up. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you for all listening. I'm sure we can all answer questions afterwards because that's going to, turn red in a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.